live. Let me know if the chat, if the audio is fine. But today I'm going to be hanging out with people in my community. I see there are already some people in chat. Let's just chat today and also look at whether the much vaunted math of Pathfinder 2E is not perfect. Let's look at that. And possibly at the low levels, which is where the vast majority of new players who are checking out the system for the first time obviously are going to be playing. Um, I'm getting this message saying I should sign into chat. Hope that's just a false alarm. Like, I've signed in on every other platform, in YouTube and in OBS. So if someone could just ping me back, that would be appreciated. So I know I'm actually being heard. Testing, testing, audio mixer. Okay, things are looking good. Oh, good. Good evening, human being. All right. I got a new microphone today. Well, I've had it for the last couple of weeks, but this is a nice upgrade. Recommended to me by Derek of Knights of Last Call. And I think he got this exact same microphone also, the Rode. Oh, here comes Megan, like clockwork. All right. Whoa, what, Oyman? This will be an interesting discussion to witness from the perspective of someone whose first session is next week. Oh, okay. Welcome to Pathfinder. All right. So let's just get into it, I guess. I mean, I have some thoughts already, but I guess they'll come out over the course of these videos, which I have not seen yet. However, I have seen this video that I will highlight. How Pathfinder undercuts its own brilliance at level 1, made by Spirit Bell Games, a relatively new channel. I like his stuff. And here's Megan. Megan has arrived. I started talking, so she must sit in my lap. Where he cites this video we're about to see. I think this video created some discussion by Titanium Dragon, where it looks like, obviously, they did some homework to analyze the math, and they have some critique of the low level, how it works at low level play, and not just the math. They just say issues with low level play. So let's see what they say. Okay. All right. Yeah, Swing Ripper did post a video about this topic recently also, and actually asked me to react to it too. So that's in the queue today. We're going to look at that today. And we're also going to look at a comment made by Mathfinder on the subreddit, which I thought was interesting, saying basically that if you're higher level, you might as well consider a moderate encounter not being 80 XP, but 130 XP or so, depending on how high level you are. Maybe add 10 XP per level, which I thought was interesting. And this was interesting comment. We're going to look at that too. So we're going to be talking about math today. Yay! Kyle Head says, you're going to love it. I just joined Ronald last block and have had a great time. Oh, talking about Pathfinder. Hey, Kyle. Okay, Jesse says, I've been studying Pathfinder mostly through your content and on and off over the last year or so. Cool. All right. So let's watch this first video. I just want to give credit to Spirit Bell Games for calling my attention to this video, and now I will watch it. Tell me if the sound level should be adjusted, by the way. Okay.
Pathfinder 2nd Edition is a very fun game. I really love it, and it is currently my RPG system of choice. That being said, it definitely isn't a system without any flaws, and today I'd like to go over one of the largest flaws in the system, low-level play. At lower levels of the game has a number of flaws. Some of these are due to design compromises, and some of these are just due to what I suspect were outright errors. But one
I'll say two things right now. If you're a GM running first level, which I do recommend everyone start at with the system, you want to not vast majority of people. You want to not throw severe encounters or monsters level 3 or higher, more than 2 levels or more above the party against the party, because level 1 characters have too few hit points. They're not as resilient as they will be in later levels. And also, I think the designers, particularly Jason Bullman, who I think of the 4 lead designers was has been kind of the leading guiding force since Pathfinder 1E days, like the fact that the game can be quite deadly, particularly at lower levels. I think that was a goal, and also that casters be a little weaker at low levels. Now, whether in retrospect people think that's a good idea, you know, that's up to us to decide. But I do think those were goals, conscious goals. Because it doesn't have the big pool of hit points you see in 4E, D&D 4E, in which this game was kind of taking inspiration from and was drawing lessons from. Sound is good? Good. All right, cool. People are, yeah, chat with each other, yes. Okay.
One of the biggest flaws is just the way that monster scaling works. So the way the game works, damage scaling is very different at low levels. Monsters die much faster at low levels, as do player characters, and many character classes don't actually function correctly at low levels. Moreover, what spells are good at doing is very different at low levels than how it is at mid to high levels. Now,
Okay. He's making points. Is this what's on the screen? Yeah. This is what's on the screen. When you look at the character monster creation chart, hopefully I can show it on the screen. What's interesting, okay, what matters in the encounter building system is not your absolute level, it's your relative level, the relative level of the monsters to the party. Yeah. However, the what happens between levels is pretty uniform from level -1 to level 20. And so level 1, if you go between level 1 and level 2, oh, I don't know if you can see, it's too small. I'll zoom in. Between level 1 and level 2, it's about 10 hit point gap, and then it increases to 15 hit points per level, and then it becomes uniformly 20 hit points per level. You see that? 111, 131, 151, 171. So it actually, I take back what I said. It's not uniform across levels -1 to 24. It actually ramps up. It's slow at first. However, while it's only, 7 hit points between level -1 and level 0, you're doubling the hit points there. You're going from 7 to 14, yeah? And that's a huge relative jump. And so I guess what I'm saying is that they just have to account for the fact that at the low levels, you just have a smaller absolute number of we're only talking about hit points. And the scaling, it's going to be it's not going to function the same way as it will at, say, level 7, right, where the math is stabilized. So because you have this, what this titanium dragon just said, like at the lowest levels people have much fewer hit points than the game is generally anticipating. Like, people are much squishier at level 1 than they will be during the vast majority of a campaign, assuming the campaign runs from a level 1 to 20. Ooh, lots of comments. Ooh. I'm just gonna skim because I can. Hey, I'm guaranteed to read your comment if you give a contribution. That's gonna be but there's just too many comments for me to look at, unfortunately. Okay, cool. So I just want to point that out. Oh, Megan's nose is in the way of my keyboard. Okay.
One of of these things make sense. After all, low-level characters are very simple, and you wouldn't want your low-level combat, which is very simplistic, to drag on. However, as a result of this, and some other choices, the game doesn't really function correctly at low levels, which makes it less useful for teaching players the game, and can mislead players into thinking that the game functions in a very different way than it actually does. In today's video, I'm going to go over these issues and explain what causes them, what the math is that underlies these issues, and at the end, discuss how these issues might be addressed.
Okay. Now, I think this is going to be interesting. How it's going to give some wrong impressions of how the game should be played. I think this is echoed in that video by the other creator that I saw before today, in which people will lean towards certain spell selections and assume casters are weak because of the low level experience. That stuff is definitely something to be conscientious about and think about. And I think this video is going to be a great contribution to the meta and, you know, the mission of getting more people to play this game. Now, whether it's objectively bad, I don't know. I forget his exact wording, but he said it created problems. But I think they're addressable, though. Like, just don't put a level 4 monster in front of the party. Anyway, but I don't know what problems he's about to identify. We'll see. Okay.
The most important thing to understand is that monster strike damage increases linearly, but starts out at only 3 damage per strike for a level -1 monster. This increases all the way to 16 damage per strike for a level 5 monster.
Hey, this is similar to what I'm pointing out, but it's on the damage end, not the hit points end.
This means that at low levels, higher level monsters actually do
Exponentially
exponentially
more
more damage,
Yep.
much more than is the case at higher levels. Going from 3 to 6 damage is a 100% increase in 2 levels, from -1 to 1. But going from 16 to 20 damage, from levels 5 to 7, is only a 25% increase in damage in 2 monster levels.
That's a very clear way to put it, and it's being expressed in the language of monster threat. This is only can you see my highlight? Okay, a 3-level gap, and it's a 100% increase. But level 16 to 20, it's only a 25% increase. But the encounter builder purports to work uniformly across all levels, when in fact it would appear that a monster that's 2 levels higher than the party, a level 5 monster confronting a level 3 party, okay, let's say level 6 party, level 6 monster confronting a level 3 party is twice as powerful doing twice as much damage as an at level 3 monster. Whereas if you were to do this a level 19 monster versus a level 16 party, it's not even close. It's not even close to a doubling. Yeah. Okay. All right, very good comments, I see. It's a limit how much I can respond to people. Yeah, crits will down people, and crits will seem super powerful and like the key to winning at low levels, I'd imagine, when that will not happen at level 9, let's say. Also, monsters at level 1, the lowest level monsters, which are level -1, tend to feel insignificant. And when we become a level 3 party, level -1 monsters seem like they die to a stiff breeze. They'll fail against that area of effect spell and die instantly. But when you get to level 10, 15, monsters that are 4 levels below the party are not gonna just die instantly, and actually they pose some threat, and which is different from what's going on at the low levels. So I wonder if someone out there is going to come up with an encounter building chart that is for different tiers of play. Oh, and I'm wondering why some YouTube creators, including Swing Ripper and Pathfinder, I know that they're going to be doing that. They are in the middle of a series or are planning. Well, I don't even know if I can, if I'm at liberty to share. I'll shut up. Maybe one of them's in chat, but I'll stop. Okay, continue the video.
The end result of this is that over-leveled monsters deal massively more damage, while under-leveled monsters deal pitifully small amounts of damage. Monster hit points also start out very low, and then scale mostly linearly, resulting in monsters getting massively tougher over the first half dozen levels. Due to player character damage scaling up so sharply at 3rd and 4th level, this results...
Okay, he's not saying it, but between 3rd and 4th level is when they get their striking runes and get their 2nd damage die.
Results in underlevel monsters being extremely frail at low levels.
Okay.
On this slide, you can see the building monster damage guidelines for various monsters at various levels.
Okay. Oh, commenter says, I think those are damage numbers, not levels in that bullet point, going from a 3 damage strike to 6 damage. Oh, hold on. Let me see what I was...
See the others being...
Oh, I thought those were levels. Oh, I'm... Okay, reading comprehension's a little, not at 100% capacity when you're streaming. I will just share. This is clearly saying, at low level, these are both 2-level gaps. So that whole, I just reiterate what I said before, but reading it correctly. These both are 2-level gaps, but one is at low level and the other is at a higher level. And basically, yeah, the significance of going 2 levels up is relatively much smaller than. And what's implied here too is that, well, what they say is that when you're, let's say, a level 4 party, monsters that are 4 levels below you are extremely weak, which will be less true at high levels.
Extremely frail at results out to 3 levels. You can see the monster damage guidelines for various. On this slide, you can see the building monster damage guidelines for various monsters at various levels.
Okay, I gotta skim chat to see if I fucked up in other ways. Wow, at level 15, level -4 monsters can take 6 or 7 successful strikes to take down. Also, a level 6 monster will inflict more dangerous conditions to a level 10 party than a level -1 monster will inflict to a level 3 party. Interesting. Yeah, there will be like conditional debuffs, status debuffs. Okay. I heard mention of Lost Mind of Fandelver having a wormling dragon that kills some characters. I guess talking about how low-level lethality is not exclusive to Pathfinder 2e. Sure. I remember a lethal wormling in a low-level D&D adventure called... what was it? The Lost Citadel? Sunless Citadel.
As you can see, the damage ends up scaling in a pretty linear fashion across most levels, although it actually is a little bit faster at low levels. As you can see, there are some +3 increases instead of +2 increases in the high damage, but it mostly levels out to about +2 damage per level. However, because it starts out so low, this results in the damage at low levels scaling up very, very fast. Perhaps...
All right. So what's interesting is that the math is linear, which makes the elite template, you know, the template you apply to a monster to add 1 level to it, generally work across levels. Like it's easy to use that, but it also leads to this issue of different of the distances between levels being bigger at low levels.
The best way of looking at this is to look at what percentage of damage you're doing looking at like a player level -2 or player level +2 monster compared to an on-level monster at each level of play. So here we have a chart. On the left-hand side, we have the player level from level 1 to 20. And at the top, you can see player level -4 to player level +4, which is the recommended range of monsters you'd be fighting. As you can see, at first level, a player level -2 monster is only doing about 50% of the damage per strike of an on-level monster. A monster that is only 1 level above the player is doing 150% of the damage of an on-level monster. And as you can see, a player level +4 monster is actually doing 267% of the damage per strike. And this is not even taking into account the differential in terms of your 2 hit. In reality, this is even going to be higher once we take that into account. So as you can see, the differences here are incredibly extreme at low levels. You can see under-level monsters are doing pitifully small levels of damage, illustrated in these blue cells, and then these over-level monsters are doing incredibly high damage, shown in these orange and red cells. At level 1, your PL +1 monster is doing 150% damage, whereas at level 10, a level +4 monster, which would be a level 14 monster at that point, is only doing 131% damage per strike. So you are looking at a very, very intense level of damage differential here. This can also be seen in this next graph.
All right, I'll just say that you can't conclude from this that a party level +4 monster at level 10 is less threatening than a party level +1 monster at level 1, because this is multiplying with the increased checks and DCs that it has, which are going to be +1.5, I think, across the board, no matter where you are. So that's going to diminish the relative weight of this comparison. I don't know if that was clear. Yeah. All right. Yeah, I'm doing my best, Kyle. Okay.
Damage differential here. This can also be seen in this next graph.
I do kind of wish, I don't know if the charts are going to include the multiplied offensive strength relative to, okay, whether they include the math of the increased accuracy in these percentages also, if we're going to see that chart, because I'd be interested in seeing that. Oh, Swing Ripper's here. Swing Ripper, I don't know if you guys see Swing Ripper's a different color because he's been a mod in my channel for years. Yes, Swing Ripper was mentioned, so he has a beard. It tends to happen. The best thing to look at is time to kill / damage compared to HP pulls. That's true. Yes, that would probably be the most useful stat. So how, because on the one hand, this looks really scary. A level 5 monster will one-shot a level 1 character, but so would a level 4 monster, right? In that regard, they have the same equal amount of, you know, fucked upness. So it's time to kill compared to HP pulls. All right, we're getting into deep territory, but this video is just focusing on a single metric to make a point, which is correct. to get you start thinking, right?
Taking the data from the previous chart and putting it on a graph. And as you can see, at low levels, the spread between high level and under level monsters is very, very high. As you go on and get to higher and higher levels, this gets smaller and smaller, and these differences eventually become less than 20 plus and minus 25% by the high levels. So you're seeing a huge amount of difference at these low levels, and then much more compression at higher levels, which is why at low levels these overlevel monsters aren't hitting you so hard, whereas at higher levels they aren't quite as dangerous. Monster 2 hit scaling also looks linear, but it's worth remembering that player character defenses are also going up, so these aren't changing nearly as much as you'd think they would be when you're seeing these numbers going from 8 to 44. You can see this more easily on the next slide, where we look at the chances of a monster hitting. This is the number of hits per round you would expect if a monster is making 2 attacks per round against a martial level armor class wearing light or medium armor. So basically, this would be like a magus or a thaumaturge or a class like that.
Okay. So the number of times that monster will hit that player character. Okay. All right. He's fulfilling my wish. I was asking what was the accuracy too to hit that party level.
So on the left-hand side, we can again see the player character level. And again, across the top, we're looking at player level -4 through player level +4 monsters. And as you can see, it actually does scale up a little bit, but not all that much. It's actually pretty constant.
Yeah, it looks all right to me.
Levels, you are actually hit a little bit less often. This is partially mitigating that extreme damage differential you're seeing. And then it scales up just a little bit. So at level 1,
All right, I hope you see a chart looking at average hit points of the level 1 party member, right? Because you have very low hit points at level 1. And I think that's been a one could argue a house rule after looking at this data is to give level 1 characters another level of hit points at level 1 and then let that peter out so that maybe at level 3 you are going by the base rules. I don't know if that's something people have tried. This all just kind of sounds like the numbers are small, so small changes are big. That's correct, but it has huge implications. Don't downplay this important discovery. Oh, true. Swing Rippers points out that level +4 monsters can still hit on the third strike. Okay. That's true. But that's a little white room because that part you don't want to be standing next to that level 5 troll if you're level 1. But anyway, I wonder where he's going with this.
Level monster, a PL +0, will hit your character about 1.1 times per round.
I see the rational solution is to start at level 2. I personally like low level, and I like lethality. I'm a sadist, and for me to say that as a GM is funny. But hey, I'm running 7 private campaigns this fall, so anyway. We ain't even in the white room. What? We're gonna go with the white room? All right.
At higher levels, this tends to be more like 1.4 times.
Okay, I don't want to miss anything.
Level 1, a on-level monster, a PL +0, will hit your character about 1.1 times per round. At higher levels, this tends to be more like 1.4 times per round. As you can see, this varies a little bit from about 1.25 to about 1.7 times
but you got
per
more
round,
hit points at
but
those
it's
higher
generally
levels.
in that realm. So you are getting hit a little bit.
Okay, question. Tell me if the sound levels are okay. I'm talking over him. Just want to make sure I'm heard.
7 times per round, but it's generally in that realm. So you are getting hit a little bit less often at low levels. You can also see that when you're looking at these higher level monsters, they are hitting you significantly more often. These PL +4 monsters are hitting you 2.1 times per round at first level, whereas a PL -2 monster is hitting you 0.95 times per round. As you go up in level, this changes a little bit, and you can see obviously there are no PL-4 monsters at first level because monsters just don't go down that low. But you can see, generally speaking, a PL-4 monster is hitting you about 0.65 to 0.85 times per round, whereas a PL+4 monster is probably going to be hitting you about 2.3 to 2.75 times per round. And now note that this is actually counting a crit as 2 hits.
Yeah, I was like, how do you have more numbers above 2? I guess it's counting crits, yeah.
So you are looking at taking a lot of damage from a PL+4 monster because they are often hitting you once and critting you once.
Is it going to
Now, if we
combine
put all
them?
this together
Yep.
with the damage chart that we were looking at earlier, we can look at how much damage per round you would expect to take from a monster relative to your character level at each level of play.
Okay, and then we need to see this compared to the typical hit points of that level, yeah? Meanwhile, the Grim Reaper says, wow, the math is really tight. I'm not calling this math analysis a white room. I'm just saying that what you had said, saying that the party level +4 monster is can hit 3 times is, well, actually, I don't even know if that uh, challenges the point he's making at all, actually. I guess that's just to point out that you're pointing out that they could do more relative damage, theoretically. But we're looking at comparisons between how low level play compares to high level play right now, though.
So again, we're looking at level 1 to 20 over on the left, and we're looking at player level -4 to player level +4 on the top. So when you look at this, you can see immediately that at level 1, a PL+3 monster is doing over 20 damage per round to your character. You know, your character who has about 18 to 22 hit point
Wait, who?
damage
What?
per one. A PL+3 monster
Okay,
is doing over 20 damage per round to your character. You know, your character who has about 18 to
that's
22
that
hit points at this point. So you can
ogre
see a
warrior.
PL+3 or PL+4 monster is just taking out a character on every one of their
Right.
turns.
And that confirms the experience of players at level 1. Okay, so where people are joining in, I'm not able to read everybody. I'm like only catching half the comments. You want me to see what you um say for sure? Ooh, 83 viewers. Wow. Welcome. Cool. It's a lot of people. There are 9 people at the start of the stream. Make a do the dollar thing if you want me to read your comment for sure.
PL+4 monster might even take out 2 in some cases. Whereas your on-level monster is only doing about 6.6 damage per round, which means that even if you were fighting 4 of them, they would only down about 1 character per round. So you can see what this actually means is that a PL+3 monster is actually doing more damage than 4 PL+0 monsters. So you are looking at a massive damage difference. Now, if we go up in level, you can see this difference is actually much, much less. Like at level 10, an on-level monster is doing about 44 damage per round, whereas that PL+4
Okay.
monster is doing about 93 damage per round. Now this means that 4 PL+0 monsters are actually doing close to twice as much damage as a PL+4 monster per round. And that PL+4 monster doing 93 damage is probably not even downing a single character, even if they focus all their attacks on them. So suddenly you can see why it is that these overlevel monsters become less scary as you go up in level, and conversely, why they are so terrifying at low levels, because they can just take you out at these lower character levels very, very fast. You can also kind of see that despite this, the damage is actually surprisingly linear if you just graph it out. You're just looking at your damage seemingly going up more or less steadily, so it looks like everything is fine, but it really isn't because you just are getting taken out so fast at these lower levels due to your lower hit point totals.
He hasn't shown a chart or graph yet that reflects the hit points of the party at these levels. I assume he will. Um, but yeah, before I even started watching this video at the start of the stream, I said, I think this is the general advice when you're at level 1. If you're a GM, don't use the encounter building guidelines as written. Like, I personally treat a moderate encounter at level 1 as a severe. So I consider it a moderate. I consider a moderate encounter as perhaps the climax of a mini adventure, let's say, or at a mini dungeon. And I particularly am mindful of a higher level monster being stronger than several low level monsters whose XP add up to the same amount as that higher level monster. That higher level monster presents much more threat. That at the low levels, at the first several levels, I feel. And yeah, that's been my experience. Pay to read, very fitting for a lawyer. Yeah. Hey, I'm not charging you per hour, at least. um, the game does tell you that a party level +3 monster is an acceptable fight, since it is true for the majority of the game. I think part of people's what skews people's perception is that people think of level 10 in D&D as high level play. Those are like getting to those your campaigns wrapping up. But that's just the mid levels in Pathfinder, because it's functional all the way up through level 20. You know, so the mid levels, what's quote normal in Pathfinder 2e, starts at around, I don't know what we would call it, level 5, maybe level 5 through 13 or so, or 14 is like our sweet spot, I guess. Which whereas in 5e, some people say the only functional levels where the game is remotely balanced is level 5 through 8. Moment of silence for 5e campaigns. Steel Chorus says level 10 just feels like you're just getting into the swing of things. Yes. Cool. Yeah. Yeah. And I like Pathfinder 2 because you continue to have things to look forward to all the way through level 20. It's exciting.
Doing a comparison of the damage dealt by overlevel and underlevel monsters relative to on-level monsters is very instructive, as you can see from this chart. So as you can
Okay.
see,
So
a
this is
level 1
multiplying them
character
together.
is taking 500% of the damage from a PL plus 4 monster per round that they would from a PL plus 0 monster per round. And meanwhile, if you look at that PL minus 2 monster, they're taking 43% of the damage. Now, what this means is that these overlevel monsters at these low levels are doing insane amounts of damage, just 500%. That means these overlevel monsters are doing more damage than 4 on-level monsters put together, and they're harder to kill, and they don't lose attacks as they lose hit points. This is what makes these overlevel monsters feel so overwhelming at low levels. As you can see, that is
All right, so he just
level
said that really
monsters.
quickly, but yeah, they could be at 1 hit point, but they have the same offensive strength as before. I wanted to break this down, and maybe I'll do a video about it. Just how is it that Pathfinder's encounter building system, how is it true that a creature that's 2 levels higher than another presents double the threat? Like, how is that mathematically broken down? And I once did an interview with Mark Seifter, one of the lead designers of 2E, who used a phrase, it was like something polynomials, like various you have various things. You have more than one function that progresses linearly here, damage amounts, and then attack bonuses. And then for the monster's defense, we have their hit points and their armor class and their saving throws, right? Those are all proceeding linearly, but they multiply together to create a total uh, threat strength. And I'm wondering, if one were to math that out, one arrives at this magic number of it doubles. Monsters double in power between every 2 levels. And something that Pathfinder 1E tried to do with its math, its experience chart, how much experience points you get from a monster doubles every 2 levels, but it was just the math was too out of control. It was based in third edition D&D and they couldn't do it, but they were able to do it this time. Kyle Head, thanks for the $10. Consider this my retainer for reading my comments. Okay. Thank you. Though I think a retainer is for future service. I guess this is the opposite. All right. Thank you. All right. Let's continue.
Feels so overwhelming at low levels. As you can see, that is extremely high compared to how it is at higher levels. As you go down this chart, you can see we're going from 500% to only 360% in just one level to 300.
Okay, what he hasn't talked about is that this is then multiplied by its defensive strength and its hit points. So, let's just say let's just say its defensive capability means you need to do twice as much attack against it, or need twice as much time to kill that creature. Then this is a 10. This PL plus 4 monster is arguably 10 times stronger than you are. I hope I'm not oversimplifying it. Okay.
100%, and then it's down to 200%. So this PL plus 4 monster starts out as this complete beast that just wrecks you. And then as you go up in level, they no longer can just cream you that way. They're only doing about twice as much damage as an on-level monster. Meanwhile,
it might be fun for people to try to run the first adventures when Paizo thought they had mathed it out and wasn't aware of this issue, because those adventure paths do not consider what is talked about in this video. I think it's at Age of Ashes, the first volume, you get a surprise party level +3 foe, who in addition, that's right at the cusp of when I think the party doesn't have striking runes yet, and this monster has like special magical abilities. It's crazy. It's crazy. And Fall of Plaguestone has some notorious encounters. I like to see if an optimizing party. Actually, that was one of my earliest experiments on this channel, to see if how long a party would survive in Fall of Plaguestone. Didn't finish that though. Okay, I'll shut up.
if you look over on the far left-hand side of the graph, you can see the PL minus 4 monsters start out doing pitifully small damage.
Wow.
At third level, you're only taking about 15% of the damage from a PL minus 4 monster that you are from an on-level monster. And so as you can see, these significantly below level monsters are doing very, very little damage to you. Now, as you go up in level, you can also see that this progressively gets higher, and it gets closer to the amount of damage that a on-level monster is doing. So at level 3, you're only looking at about 15% from a under-level monster by 4 levels. But at level 8, that under-level monster is now doing about 30%. And in the long term, this equilibrates around 40%. Likewise, the level -3 creature is doing only about 20% starting out, but that then goes up to 30%, and then 40%, and eventually it's about half the damage of an on-level monster. So as you can see, these under-level monsters start out as being a very insignificant threat once you go below -1 or -2 at the lower levels, but then as you go up in level, these start to become more and more significant. And this explains the way that the encounter building guidelines are laid out. 16 level -4 monsters are supposed to be equivalent to 4 on-level monsters, or 1 level +4 monster. And if you look at this chart, you can see that that's just not true at lower levels. At lower levels, that over-level monster is way more dangerous, whereas those under-level monsters are pretty pathetic.
Okay. All right.
Here's a graph showing the same data. Again, you can see it starts out at over 500% at low levels for that PL +4 monster, and then eventually it ends up under 200%. So you can see that at these low levels, there's this huge deviation, whereas around level 6 to 7, you start to see it getting all way more like it is in the long run, and things start to level out. This leads to a very misleading impression at low levels because these overlevel monsters are complete monsters, and so people think that, oh, at level 10 this is going to be terrifying, but actually it's not nearly as bad. In fact, relative damage more or less stabilizes at level 8, as you
What
can see
people
here.
think it
It
gets
does change a
terrifying at
little bit
level
after that
10? I
point,
missed that
but
point.
around that are complete monsters, and so people think that and things start to level, getting all way more like it is in the long run, and things start to level out. This leads to a very misleading impression at low levels because these overlevel monsters are complete monsters, and so people think that, oh, at level 10 this is going to be terrifying, but actually it's not nearly
Oh,
as bad. In fact, relative
it's
damage
easier.
more or less stabilizes at level 8, as you can see here. It does change a little bit after that point, but around that point, you're looking at it getting pretty reasonable. Now, all of this is leading to a lot of problems. Overlevel monsters are disproportionately powerful at low levels, making them into incredible damage machines that can down a character in a single round, and some kinds can just straight up kill them with a critical hit. Underlevel
I wonder if someone could come up with just a different encounter building chart for level 1. um, come up with some different numbers. I don't know.
monsters, on the other hand, are obviously disproportionately weak. A PL -2 monster does proportionate damage equal to
Sorry.
a weak
I
straight up kill them with a critical hit. Underlevel monsters, on the other hand, are obviously disproportionately weak. A PL -2 monster does proportionate damage equal to a PL -4 monster at level 18. That is to say, at level 1, the PL -2 monster is doing the same percentage of damage relative to an on-level monster as an underlevel -4 monster does at level 18. This leads players and GMs alike to believe that overlevel monsters are incredibly overpowered, where underlevel monsters are very weak.
All right, there we go. There's a big conclusion. Which has definitely been the impression. I mean, um, after I got past the early levels, I did notice that the underlevel monsters seem to be getting quote stronger.
And this is just not true at higher levels of the game. Hit point scaling on lower level monsters.
Oh, question: is Abomination Vault a bad idea to run for beginners? Um, yeah, I unfortunately ran that with D&D YouTubers, and when at a time when a lot of people were recommending it, and so I kind of went along. I think it should be tweaked. It was, I think, um, Paizo started to uh uh what's the word, rein in low level lethality with strength of thousands with that adventure path. So it was like a couple of years before they started doing so. Um, and Abomination Vaults, by then they still had not done that yet. Um, but there's a lot of community. You can find some community guides that tweak that adventure. If you want to run a mega dungeon, definitely that's a good one. And there's a couple more. 7 Dunes for Sandpoint, and then the new one that's coming out, is it something Bastions something? And then yeah,
This is also interesting. If you look at the chart of average hit points for monsters according to the Building Monsters guidelines, HP scaling is actually purely linear at levels 5 to 20. You have plus 25 hit points per level for high, 20 hit points per level for moderate, and 15 hit points per level for low. But of course, this wouldn't work if you extrapolated this back to 0, right? You'd end up with monsters with 0 or negative amounts of hit points. So it obviously has to deviate. It also has to deviate because low-level characters deal so little damage. The damage upgrade characters get from striking runes, and the upgrade damage from rank 2 and rank 3 spells is absolutely enormous.
mm.
What this means is that as you go up in level, monsters actually do take more hits to kill. At level 1, a
Ooh, hits to kill.
PL plus 0
Okay, so he just talked about how there is the biggest relative damage boost marshals will get when they get that first striking rune, when they go from 1 damage die to 2. And then he just mentioned that spellcasters get a damage boost probably bigger than at any other spell rank between 2nd rank and 3rd rank, which hews to the history of D&D, right? 3rd level spells was when you got Fireball, and there's traditionally been like a significant jump in the how much of an impact you can have in a battle with your spells. Um, yeah, I see Abomination Vaults not recommended for players, but I think there's just some groups who just want to go into a dungeon. For those who want to do that, it's fine. But you also have to be aware that it's like cramped corridors too. Okay. Yeah, starting Abomination Vaults at level 2 is a good idea. Okay, all right. I keep talking about Abomination Vaults. Let's get back to the main topic. Oh, but he's going into
Zero
hits to
monster.
kill a monster.
Take more hits to kill. At level 1, a PL plus 0 monster takes only about 2 hits to kill, a little bit more than 2 hits from a standard fighter using a Guisarm polearm, which is 1d10 plus 4 damage. But as you go up in level, you can see that the number of hits required increases quite a bit, and then it kind of levels off. This is actually in spite of the fact that the fighter's damage will scale up as you go up in level. This is actually taking that into account. Note that the damage percentage on this chart is a percentage of the damage dealt by a single strike, that is to say a single hit, from a Guisarm fighter at that level. So from the lower levels, you can see that you got like 200%, 300%, 400%, 500%, which equates to 2, 3, 4, or 5 strikes. And then you see up to like 600%, and then it kind of sort of stabilizes after that point. It starts getting up to the 700s and even the 800s at high levels, but it sort of stabilizes around that. If you look at the plus 4 level monster, however, it's very interesting.
Yeah. So at level 1, the plus 4 monster requires 8 strikes to kill versus 2 strikes for an at level monster. Whereas later on, it's almost a 1-to-1 comparison. At level 20, it's like you can see 789% as compared to 1053%. Interesting.
Because you can see the lowest level is actually the level that these PL plus 4 monsters die the fastest, which makes sense because their hit points aren't super high. But as you can see, that quickly scales up, and after a few levels, you're up into about 1000%, which is to say about 10 hits. And this is pretty consistent across all the rest of the levels of the game. So what you're seeing then is these overlevel monsters actually aren't particularly harder to kill, and in some cases may actually be
Yeah. He's forgetting armor class, but hold on.
easier to kill at low levels. So you're getting into this sort of rocket tag sort of dealio, where you have these characters who are doing tons of damage, but also dying really quickly. And if you look at the
Wait,
underlevel
sorry.
sort of, and in some cases may actually be easier to monsters
Rewinding.
actually aren't particularly harder to kill, and in some cases may actually be easier to kill at low levels. So you're getting into this sort of rocket tag sort of dealio, where you have these characters who are doing tons of damage, but also dying really quickly. And if you look at the underlevel monsters, you can again see the same story of the low levels. These monsters die really, really fast. As you go up in level, they are leveling out.
This is all relative to the higher level play, right? That's the point he's making, because those PL plus 4 monsters do not feel like they die quickly at level 1.
So as you can see, these on level and below level monsters actually take relatively consistent levels of hits, although as it turns out, because of their lower AC, it does in fact scale more than you'd think. And then as you go up to these lower level monsters, their hit points aren't actually scaling up that much faster. So the number of hits is actually not that much greater on a PL plus 4 monster than it is on an equal level monster once you get to the mid levels of like level 9, level 10. Now, this has some interactions with the armor class scaling, and armor class actually scales very differently from everything else. It is incredibly consistent, and you always have the 3 categories. Extreme AC is always +3 above high. High.
Oh wow, it's like constant in the first between level -1 and 1. I noticed that the AC's kind of similar, but then their HP scales up. It's like in those between level -1 and 1, the difference between monsters is purely in terms of their how hard they are to kill, is purely how many hit points they have, not their armor class. I thought that was interesting. Which is different from higher levels, yeah?
Is always +1 above moderate.
I see people questioning him using kind of a high accuracy fighter using a Gizarm. I don't know, given what's being compared here, I don't know if that matters too that much here. I think he's looking at low level play versus higher level play. So a lot of the points he'd make would be similar if he were using if it were barbarian with a one-handed sword, you know, I think.
And moderate is always +2 above low. Now, when you look at this, you actually see that your 2-hit chance is, as you might expect, actually pretty much static over time. But even this is a little bit misleading. If you look up towards the top of the chart, you can see that your odds of hitting an underlevel monster actually do go up a little bit over time. This is because those level -1 and level 0 monsters do not have as low of armor class as you would expect from an underlevel creature, whereas the overlevel monsters do actually end up pretty static in terms of how hard they are to hit. This makes sense because your underlevel monsters at the low levels do actually have slightly wonky AC scaling, as you can see from the previous chart, but this is interesting because mostly your 2-hit chance is actually static, which means that you're going to end up with these pretty consistent numbers of hits and misses against monsters. Here's a graph illustrating the 2-hit chance. Now this is for a standard martial rather than a fighter, but as you can see, it's pretty much the same across levels. Your PL +4 monster takes about 15 to hit, assuming no other bonuses. A on-level monster is going to be taking about a 9 to hit, variable between 8 and 10 depending.
I assume he's doing this math to combine it with the previous chart. I'm not sure what this is getting at.
On level. And then your level -4 monster will, after level 5 or so, take somewhere between a 2 and a 4 to hit. And this is all pretty consistent, as you can see. This is actually the case for fighters as well. They just have slightly boosted base accuracy. So as you can see, all their charts
wait, hold on.
as
I
well.
just want to understand this. So it's almost as if you step far back, that the lower level monsters are getting an AC boost, and their scaling is reflected by their hit point increases instead. I guess that was necessary because they're assuming players will start, when you step back at, if you were to put player hit point levels in a graph, the players are here and then they go up to here, right? And because player hit points increases linearly, you get a flat number of hit points at every level. You're actually quite close to 0 if you have a bird's eye view at the levels. So they needed to have, I don't know if anyway, someone who can pull this all together probably can finish the point I'm trying to think about.
Just have slightly boosted base accuracy. So as you can see, all their chart is just a little bit nicer. They have a little bit better chance to hit. And if you go to their graph, this is exactly the same story. They just are a little bit better. So
I'm sorry, I'm a little distracted by chat. I don't know what people are debating.
As well, they just have slightly boosted base.
I'm trying to focus on the main point of this video.
Accuracy. So as you can see, all their chart is just a little bit nicer. They have a little bit better chance to hit. And if you go to their graph, this is exactly the same story. They just are a little bit better in terms of hitting. When you look at the intersection between those hit point totals and those 2 hit numbers, we can see that the time to kill increases from low levels for weaker monsters.
Right. This is definitely felt in play. Those weaker monsters do not get killed quickly at higher levels. Okay. Something tells me like his Yeah, we're gonna move away from the graphs. We're going to figure out what the wrong impressions of Pathfinder balance will be, um, and how it might distort the meta, the low level experience. I think in the second half, which I think will be really interesting.
Level 1, you can see actually the time to kill is the lowest it is at any level in the game, and you really are playing way more like Rocket Tag. But as you go up in level, the number of rounds it would take of making 2 non-agile strikes per round to kill a monster, assuming a Guisarm fighter.
Okay, hold on. Rounds to kill from 2 non-agile strikes. So I'm assuming this is going to now take into account that it's harder to hit a higher level ace and a higher AC monster. Huh. Okay, cool. All right, rewind.
Lowest it is at any level in the game, and you really are playing way more like Rocket Tag. But as you go up in level, the number of rounds it would take of making 2 non-agile strikes per round to kill a monster, assuming a Guisarm fighter, to hit and damage versus high monster AC, you can see that over time, your lower level monsters, these PL-4 to PL+0 monsters, they're taking significantly more hits over time to kill. So at level 1,
Ah, and that's much more a phenomenon. That's not true at the uh on the right side of the chart. It's relative after the first couple of levels. It's relatively stable. Interesting.
your PL+0 monster is taking about a round and a half of actions to kill. A PL-2 monster is taking half a round to kill, which is to say you're probably killing them in a single strike. And when you're all the way up to level 3, that PL-4 creature is taking less than half of a turn to kill. But as you can see, this is all scaling upwards on the lower end of the chart. So these PL+0, PL-1, PL-2, as you go up in level, you are taking more actions to kill these people. It's going to take you multiple rounds of attacks to kill a single monster. And by level 8, this kind of reaches about where it ends up at about 5 rounds of player actions making 2 strikes to kill them. Now, in reality, it's going to be
Level 8.
less than this because this is not taking into account things like reactions, things like your spellcaster hurting multiple enemies in the same round, anything like that. This is just looking at pure meathead, no reaction, attacking twice per round with
Mm-hmm.
a non-agile weapon. But you can kind of get the picture here, where monsters are living longer as you go up in level, and then it kind of just stabilizes after a certain point. This is actually true for giant barbarians as well, as we will see shortly. But if we look at this next slide here on the time to kill increases from low levels for weaker monsters, you can see that the top part of the chart is actually fairly consistent, but these lower level creatures are in fact trending upwards, and they just kind of end up at a slightly higher level, which just means greater monster durability over time.
I wonder if this would all be I wonder if D&D 4E quote did this better, because you get much more hit points at level 1 as a player character. You get to add your entire constitution score. And and you might start with, I don't know. I'm just going to I don't know 4E enough, but I'm going to just guess maybe 25, 30 hit points at level 1. And then you're going to gain 7 hit points. I'm I'm pulling numbers out of my ass, but what I'm saying is that there's only like a 25% increase, I'm guessing, between level 1 hit points and level 2 hit points for player characters in 4E, because they were aware of this issue of the scaling being different. Um, but that's not the route Pathfinder 2E took. And it kind of means that in 4E, you kind of feel like you've gained a few levels already at level 1. It kind of does feel like that.
This is also true of the giant barbarian. Even though their damage scales at a higher rate than the fighter does, they will still see that same upward trend of taking more actions to kill the monsters. It's actually slightly interesting because they actually will kill the underlevel monsters a little bit faster than the fighters will, and they will kill the overlevel monsters a little slower. As you can see when we go on this next graph, it takes them up to 22 rounds to kill an overlevel monster versus like 20 is the max for a fighter. In reality, of course, it's not really taking that many rounds. Obviously, you have 4 characters in a party, so any of these numbers would be divided by 4 at the very least. And in reality, there are ways of dealing more damage than this. But all of this has a very important consequence, which is that weak monsters...
All right, here we go. We're getting to the conclusions. All right. I see a comment. High level has a surprising amount of hit kills for the players, scared to death being the easiest one to get. Yeah, things are not purely the math, and I'm happy that that's true. Because, yeah, there are some more dramatic effects you can get. There's death spells, there's scared to death. And monsters on their end will have things that will make high level feel different, and players in turn will have counters to death effects, possibly. Okay, here we go.
Die faster at low levels. This is the most noticeable thing about low level combat, other than the fact that you are dying faster, is that the enemies die faster too. The number of rounds it takes to kill a monster is lowest at level 1 across the board, and it goes up over time in all categories, but it goes up way more for PL +1 and below monsters.
And okay, just one obvious takeaway from this is that higher level play is going to take a combat's going to take longer than at low levels, not simply because of the players have more possible actions they can do. They have all these feats that give them different things to choose from, and the status effects that can pile up, but just the scaling of the math means that things need to be hit more.
PL +1 monster takes like 2 to 3 martial character turns.
Yes, Megan. Jump in my lap, Megan. Come on, you're welcome. Meow. Meow. Okay, she's here. Here's Megan. Megan. Okay.
To kill at level 1, but it takes more like 6 to 8 at higher levels.
A PL +1 monster takes 2 to 3 martial turns to kill at level 1, but 6 to 8 at higher levels. Okay.
PL +0 is going to be taking like 2 martial turns to kill at level 1, but takes 4 to 5 at higher levels. PL -1 and PL -2 monsters will often go down in just 1 to 2 strikes at low levels, but at high levels, the PL -4 monsters might take 2 martials concentrating on them to down them, and they won't even die consistently, even if you do that. So this kind of illustrates how monster scaling is going to change the game in a very fundamental sort of way. This leads to things changing wildly from the low levels to the mid to high levels. And you really see by level 6, you see PL -1 to PL +1 monsters reach their approximate long-term equilibrium state, but it actually takes until level 11 for significantly below level monsters to reach their long-term equilibrium. So this causes changes as you go up in level. So at the low levels, your underlevel monsters are very, very weak. By level 6, you're looking at the monsters around your level range and a little bit lower are going to reach approximately their long-term state, whereas you in a 1 through 10 campaign will never actually even see the final state of those really underlevel monster encounters that you'll see for the second half of the game.
Megan has jumped on my table and changed my angles here. I'm actually now thinking to myself that is one might think a solution here would be to at level 5 those level 1 monsters going to be underperforming. Let's say that. So what, maybe boost their damage, but then when you're at level 1 party, those level 1 monsters with their boosted damage that you've done to make them work more ideally for a level 5 party makes them too dangerous for that level 1 party. And now I think I now see the reason why, like, you can't just... 2E has decided to not have minions, which are from D&D 4E, monsters with 1 hit point that are worth 1/4 the amount of XP as an at level monster, but they provide a similar, well, similar. Uh, they still present significant threat despite their mere 1 hit point. So, I can see why 4E would have minions, level 5 minions that give you 25% of the XP of a level 5 standard monster, and then a solo who presents 5 times as much XP as a standard monster of the same level. I think so. It makes it one the math is arguably more worked out in 4E, though I don't know personally whether I would prefer things to have that label, like I am a solo, I am a minion. um, maybe they could be templates for 2 EGM though, so that you can have at level 5, level 1 monsters that don't feel like pushovers, if you want to have minions, let's say. It'd be cool to see someone's homebrewed minion math. Okay, back to the video.
So at level 1, a fighter might dispatch a PL-2 monster in 1 hit, and a PL-1 monster in 1 crit, meaning a stray reactive strike can completely eliminate a monster right off the bat. Whereas at level 10, a PL-2 monster might well take 5 to 6 hits to take down. This has a very significant impact on what low-level play rewards versus higher-level play. Low-level play rewards offense over defense.
Okay, here we go. This is the interesting part. I appreciate, you all know me from my channel, that I like to take a long time to make a point. This confirms through science what a lot of people have already seen who have, experienced Pathfinder over a range of levels, that under level monsters are definitely tougher once you get past those early levels. So, okay, here we go. Low level play rewards offense over defense and debuffing, because the fight's going to end, right? This is like playing Slay the Spire. Why in Act 1, bother about scaling your strength up when you can kill that, monster in a couple turns, right? I have to introduce Slay the Spire today. Slay the Spire is awesome game.
Would you raise a shield when your map -5 attack has a good chance of killing an enemy? Why spend 2 actions debuffing an enemy when you can just kill it? Why even debuff an enemy at all when it isn't even going to survive the round? The answer is, of course, that you actually often shouldn't at low levels against low-level monsters. As monster hit point totals climb, debuffs and defensive actions become more important and more valuable because the monsters are actually going to have turns, and you can't just kill them in one round. Compounding all of the aforementioned problems, there are very limited tank and reaction options at low levels. At level 1, only 4 classes have built-in reactions that help them control space or protect their allies. The Fighter's Reactive Strike, the Champion's Myriad Champion Reactions, the Guardian's Intercept Strike, and the Thaumaturge's Weapon Implement Reaction. The Monk, which is generally a tank class, doesn't get a reaction until level 4. And the Swashbuckler and various off-tank classes don't actually get a reaction that helps control space until level 6. This can lead to weird party composition issues at low levels, and also makes the classes that get reactions at low levels, especially the Fighter and the Champion, disproportionately powerful due to most characters lacking them completely. Getting an extra action per round, which is potentially a no multi-attack penalty strike, is really, really powerful.
Yeah, and I wonder if these should be solved, what he's pointing out on the screen. I guess this will just be combined with how this will interact with what we've seen so far. Okay, what's chat saying? Still, I have to say though, at low levels, tactics still matter though. Like the maxim "don't attack 3 times" remains true. So on the one hand, he's right. You do want offense is more important than debuffs and defense, and let's say tanking. I think he's going to get into at low levels. But on the other hand, you can't play it like D&D 5e where it's just attack, 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 right? That's there's still some that advice to work together as a team, debuffing is still valuable and to think about because yeah, attacking, making it, doing a hunted shot and then attacking a third time that usually misses might not work.
Gives these characters a huge edge at low levels. On the flip side of things, we see the opposite problem. Low-level spells leave a poor, misleading impression, because many low-level spells are just straight up bad. In old-school style games, low-level casters had very few spell slots,
Mm-hmm.
but the spell slots
Yeah, I think it was a design decision to make low level casters feel like you have something to look forward to by gaining levels. Let's say, to put it mildly.
they had could totally wreck an encounter, with
Uh
monstrously
huh.
powerful
The
spells like
sleep
Sleep
spell.
basically deleting a normal encounter or making a hard one much easier. These options don't exist in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, with good reason, but the first rank spells are still mostly very mediocre, with a few exceptions.
Yeah, you don't have encounter enders like sleep, but you do have more spells you can cast. You have focus spells, especially, and the cantrips, of course. But yeah, there's still the overall idea, though, that you're going to grow into feeling better later, I think.
Now, one of the problems is that most first rank damage
But still, there are very good low rank spells, though. Um,
spells are really bad, and this leaves a Now, one of the problems is that most first rank damage spells are really bad, and this leaves a very misleading impression. Breathe Fire, for instance, the premier AoE damage spell, deals 2d6 damage in a 15-foot cone. However, if you remember from the previous slides, even a level -1 monster, a monster 2 levels below you, has 8 hit points, and they often have high reflex saves to boot at low levels.
hmm,
This means that it just won't kill any of these monsters many times, even if they fail their saves. And 7 damage to an on-level monster, a level
hmm.
1 monster, will often not put it in range of being one-shot by a strike from a marshal. While 3 damage, which you're going to deal on a successful save in many cases, may not even result in reducing a 2-strike to a 1-strike reliably. Electric Arc is actually almost as good as Breathe Fire, and is often better for mopping up damaged enemies, and it's just a cantrip. Thunderstrike deals 1d12 plus 1d4 damage, which is about the same as a Fighter Strike, and Force Barrage is going to do about the same damage at 3d4 plus 3, but it's automatic. This can just kill a level -2 monster automatically, a level -1 creature, but it won't kill a PL -1, which is a level 0 monster at first level, and might not deal enough damage to set up a on-level monster to get one shot by a strike, depending on the damage rules.
Okay. Um, I'm gonna have a patented bathroom break in a second, but these are things to think about. I'll leave this. I want to think about them. Um, hmm. So in the case of Breathe Fire, um, first you're attacking multiple people, which is a caster thing. The marshals are not going to do that. Be able to do that. If you're lucky and able to group 3 goblins together, maybe one of them will die and 2 of them will go down to very low hit points. Um, and I guess you're not going to feel like you did much impact because a goblin at 8 hit points versus a goblin at 3 hit points, they're both going to be killed by a marshal's single strike, right? Or likely to be killed. Um, so I can see that. Um, when you're a level 3 caster casting spells against level -1 enemies, though, it feels awesome. But on the other hand, those level -1 enemies are very not threatening, though, right? So I think I heard this in the other video by the other creator, that your strength at doing AoE and dealing with a lot of lower level monsters at once feels less impactful because lower level monsters are just not as threatening at the lower levels. Hmm. Okay, so that's one thought. I'll be right back. Talk amongst yourselves. Okay. And I'm not sure what point he's making here. He's saying Thunder Strike is comparable to a Fighter Strike, which I guess feels bad because you're casting 2 spells and using a limited resource. Um, but this isn't particularly one. It's not a particularly low level problem. Um, at higher levels, you're going to be doing damage comparable to a martial strike. Still, the strength of you as a caster is you're able to have the right tool for the right occasion. Maybe something is a big brute and has a weakness to something has weakness to electricity or a low reflex save. You can target multiple defenses, yeah. But what was the point I was gonna make? I forget. but yeah, I think doing single target damage is not a strength though of casters in this system. Yeah, I've seen AoE being very cool, feel very impactful in Pathfinder 2e. Once you get to the mid levels, I'll say like level, um, I don't know, level 8, level 10ish. Um,
These low-level spells are where the notion that spellcasters don't deal very good damage comes from. In reality, spellcasters actually deal significantly more damage than martial strikes, and this actually goes up to twice as much damage as a martial strike at mid to high levels. If you look at this, you can see that at rank 1, Breathe Fire is only dealing 2d6 damage, or about 7 damage on average. But at rank 2, Burning Rays is doing 4d6, which is 14 damage on average, and at rank 3, Fireball.
okay, so it's scaling linearly the damage by rank. Um, Pathfinder 2e has mapped it out. Spell ranks has not given a overpowered third level spell called Fireball. Cough cough. Um, so that's good. That's figured out. But yeah, it looks like their first rank spells for the damage is much lower at rank 1. However, I thought the hit points of the monsters is going to scale aggressively at the same time. So what are we getting at here? I'm not sure. Oh, AoEs. Oh, compared to strike damage. Let's see here. This chart on the right. Yes. It scales spell damage scales martial damage faster. Ooh, I didn't know that. That's an important discovery. And this includes AoEs, yeah? Huh. Hmm. So I'm not saying casters are more powerful than martials at a higher level, but we have a little of the quadratic wizard linear fighter issue. I wouldn't call it a problem, but it wouldn't be quadratic. It would be um a steeper linear versus more shallow linear between casters and martials, it would seem here. Looking purely at damage, right? But I guess it's balanced by the fact that it's not all DPR, right? Martials can take feats like Whirlwind Strike and do Anyway, casters and marshals need each other, according to our experiment way in the past that we did 5 years ago, 4 years ago. Swing Ripper says slot damage does outscale martial basic strike damage, but you got to remember that martial strikes carry a ton of utility via strike and feats late game. Yeah. Martials can do more things than just DP damage. Roaring Applause is so good as a silver bullet versus reactions. Ron, do you remember the 10-headed Hydra fight? I am trying to remember which was that in one of our streams, but yeah, that's crazy. Or was that in our Gatewalkers campaign? I don't remember. I think Gatewalkers. I ran I GM'd Swing Whipper in Gatewalkers. Casters also have far weaker defenses than marshals. Okay. Ayumon says spellcasters use spell slots as well. Okay, where they're limited resource. Yeah, goes back to the arguments that I've there was the big controversy when the remaster came around about whether they were nerfing casters, and I kind of made a number of videos pushing back against that panic. And also, when I started my channel, we did the Marshals v Casters experiment, where the casters won, but not necessarily because casters are stronger in a White Room scenario, but they were able to just adapt to the situation. And in the end, the dragon won because the dragon combined the strength of marshals and casters, and marshals and casters, this argument is kind of silly because you need each other. So shut up. That's my kind of TLDW. Hope I didn't offend anybody. People continue to express yourselves. I hope I didn't drive anyone away. Okay, here we go.
Is dealing 6d6 or 21 damage on average. And in fact, there's also Thundering Dominance at rank 2, which isn't on this.
Ooh, there's a spell called Thundering Dominance? I want to see that spell.
Chart, which deals 4d8 damage, which is 18 damage on average. And as you can see, if you compare this over to the fighter damage, you're now suddenly seeing that the fighter is dealing more damage, 136% of the damage, with a strike, as your AoE spell is doing at level 1.
Yeah, I'll just say, I don't know if this creator is going to make this point that casters surpass marshals. I doubt it, but my experience is that that's not true. I feel like I've GM'd up to level 20 with Best of the Ruby Phoenix that I don't feel like either surpasses the other.
By level 5, you're looking at that same strike dealing only about 70% of the damage that your fireball does, except your fireball is hitting every enemy in the encounter. By level 11, you're now down to about doing 50% or so damage, and this actually continues through most of the high levels. As you can see, you're doing about twice as much damage with your max rank spell that is hitting multiple enemies as a fighter is doing against a single enemy. This really is not what the low levels set people up to believe, but as it turns out, casters actually are the highest damage units in the game, not martial characters. What ends up happening is that a lot of people learn the wrong lessons at low levels because they see these damage spells and they aren't really doing much, and they're like, oh, damage spells aren't very good. But once you get up to casting 4th, 5th, 6th rank spells, you're doing way more damage with these spells. They're just much more powerful. And this is why spells cost 2 actions to cast. They are doing way more than a single strike is, which is why they cost more actions. But at low levels, when you're doing less damage, and often your martial buddy is just one-shotting things, it makes it look like you don't really do much with your spells, and you need to be doing other things. But it turns out this is just the wrong lesson to learn, and it's just that low levels are weird. So what are some good spells at low levels? Well, Runic Weapon and Runic Body are really good. Runic Weapon and Runic Body are a huge damage boost at level 1, boosting your 1d10 or 1d12 weapon user's damage by plus 1d10.
Yeah, it's going to help against those higher level monsters to get more damage. Not necessarily against the weaker ones that die to one hit, right?
10 or plus 1d12, as well as adding another plus 1 to hit.
Huge relative boost to their damage.
A fighter who is normally dealing 1d10 plus 4 damage, dealing 2d10 plus 4 damage, may now one-shot level -1 monsters, and on crits will now reliably one-shot a on-level monster, whereas before their crits wouldn't kill them about half the time. A barbarian who normally deals 1d10 plus 10 or 1d12 plus 10 damage may now deal 21 or 23 damage on average, which is not only almost always going to kill those lower level monsters, but it will also one-shot a on-level monster and will shave off half the hit points of a level plus 2 monster, which would be a level 3 monster at first level, per swing. And a lucky critical hit might just straight up kill one. But there's a problem, and the problem is these spells teach you the wrong lesson. These spells seem to teach you that buff spells are super powerful, and they're what a caster should be doing. And this is completely wrong. These 2-action buffs at low levels are as good as buff spells ever actually get. These spells are boosting your damage often by 50% or more, and they're often pushing you into one-shotting enemy territory, or significantly reducing the number of strikes you need to land. At higher levels, while these 2-action buff spells are situationally useful, buff spells simply do not add this level of relative damage. You just can't increase your damage by 50% or more.
This is interesting. This is going to mean all of the optimization discussions on the subreddit, you need to now start asking yourself, are you at low level or high level?
With a buff spell at higher levels, and they don't push you up over this important 1-shot and 2-shot thresholds anymore. You are no longer seeing these huge gains that you see at first level. Moreover, the extremely low level damage of casters at these low levels makes these buffs look much more appealing.
I think he may be overstating the weakness of casters a bit. I don't know if he's gonna climb down a bit on that, because he is just looking at DPR, right? But it is true, though, what he is saying does make casters overall feel like they are useless, not as useful as the marshals.
Healing by comparison. I mean, oh, I'm buffing my buddy, now he's one-shotting all these enemies. Obviously, this is what I'm supposed to be doing as a caster, right? But as it turns out, this isn't actually how it works at any level other than the very, very lowest levels, so this just teaches people the wrong lesson. The potency of these spells at low levels misleads players into thinking that buffs are the primary and strongest way that casters interact in combat, whereas in reality, these spells are just unusually powerful at this level due to boosting your damage from 1 die to 2, and higher level damage spells are much stronger than buffs. Another weird aspect at low levels is summon spells. Because monster level doesn't go below -1, summon spells summon monsters much closer.
I'm just wondering why the remaster cantrips start with 2 dice of damage and then add 1 each subsequent rank. Huh, but then this math was done after the remaster. Because this suggests that one could house rule that low first rank spells should get a damage boost. Possibly. Oh, Kojo is here. I'm gonna see you in the beginner box, right? I'm gonna be for folks watching. I plan to stream the new beginner box. So like, subscribe, ring the bell. I'm so close to 50,000. Have you checked? I'm like 60 away from 50,000. I gotta do a celebration. But yeah, subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet, and like this video. I might hit 50,000. I might hit 50,000 today. Who knows? Crazy. Wait, I gotta check my channel right now. See where I'm. Am I about to hit? How close am I to 50,000? I have 49,940 subscribers. Yes, I'm super close. I have too many windows open. Go there, you go there. Sorry, Windows management. Not the most exciting thing. Where's my chat window? There you go. Okay.
Closer to level of PCs at low ranks. A rank 1 spell.
Oh, what's this? Summons? We're talking about summons now.
Is summon spells. Because monster level doesn't go.
Whoa.
Another weird aspect at low levels is summon spells. Because monster level doesn't go below -1, summon spells summon monsters much closer to level of PCs at low ranks. A rank 1 spell summons a level -1 monster, a rank 2 spell summons a level 0 monster, and a rank 3 spell summons a level 1 monster. These monsters have proportionally higher offense and defense and damage resistance than higher level monsters tend to, especially relative to PCs.
Okay, so what's hidden here is that rank 5 is a level 5 character casting that. So summoning monsters 4 levels lower as opposed to 2 levels lower.
Level -1 Skeleton Guard, for instance, has DR5 to slashing and piercing, and can actually be almost invincible to many low-level monsters, depending on those damage types. And it deals almost as much damage as a level 1 monster, 1d6 plus 2 damage. Meanwhile, you look at something like a skunk or a giant skunk, their musk ability is actually stronger than your on-rank debuff spells.
Skunks are strong summons.
The skunk bites will actually deal reasonable damage. A giant skunk's bite will only deal 1 less damage than a fighter using a one-handed reach weapon at level 3. So what you're looking at is these summons being really powerful in ways that they aren't at higher levels. They have...
Oh, wow. I mean, my experience has been summons are generally weak, except for the times I saw a giant skunk on the battlefield. And yeah, that's kind of cool that summons at low levels are actually quite impactful
more
spells.
Hit points relative to monsters, their defenses are higher, and so this makes them seem like...
I mean, I'm not saying summon spells are weak, by the way. A smart player can make them... Actually, I'm not convinced that they're weaker and that they need to be buffed. Just to be clear.
Really powerful offensive tool, and is what leads to a lot of complaints as people go up in level, and now suddenly these summons that they were relying on aren't quite as powerful. That doesn't mean that summons aren't decent at higher levels. They actually are, and there's actually a number of pretty good summons, but they don't sport the same level of offensive powers, and at higher levels, their ability to absorb damage and otherwise provide utility is much more important.
Yeah. At high levels, don't count on your summons to do damage. That's what I'm seeing also. They're not going to hit. They need like an 18 to hit, I'm finding, at level maybe 14-ish, maybe.
Another really big deal at low levels is the bad rank 1 focus spells. Focus spells are the bread and butter of casters, but many caster classes lack good focus spells at rank 1, or only have a few good focus spells, and the player may not choose them or may not know about them. Casters without focus spells that are good lack this powerful fallback option. They really extend how many spells you have that you can toss out. Casters with good focus spells have a big leg up at low levels, as it greatly extends their power across the day. Characters with spells like Earth's Bile, Spray of Stars, and Tempest Surge start out with powerful options that they can dump out every encounter, potentially multiple times per encounter, without spending spell slots, many of which add on free debuffs. While on the other hand, many classes just don't get a good focus spell until rank 3 and often level 6. And moreover, at first level, because of how many focus spells scale, because they often scale according to that 2d6 damage per level, your first rank focus spells may well not deal that much damage at rank 1, again falling into that same issue with that spell scaling, and then when you get up to rank 2 at level 3, suddenly your spells are doing literally twice as much damage. All of this leads to one final fundamental issue. Class balance is just worse at level 1 than at any other point in the game. Some classes will one-shot...
All right. Looking at chat. Oh, Swing Warper super active in chat, as per usual. Cool.
monsters, sometimes when it isn't even their turn, while others will struggle to be consistently useful. Some casters will have a very limited number of spell slots and no useful focus spells, while others will have strong focus spells they will be using every round to win encounters, or healing spells that greatly mitigate low-level swinginess. Lack of player knowledge can make low-level casters even worse through poor spell selection and very suboptimal usage. This is the level at which you are starting out. People often don't know what they're doing, and so they will do things and they'll just feel ineffective because they are ineffective because they don't know how to play a character in the system yet, and casters are often harder to play than marshals are. Some characters also have reactions or an animal companion or eidolon, and basically get extra actions per turn, and other classes will get nothing to compensate them for not getting those features, leading to those characters seeming disproportionately powerful
Okay.
at low levels. And this is really the big problem. The low levels fail to teach the game properly. Low levels in TTRPGs are always designed to be simpler than higher levels to serve as a jumping in point for new players. Sometimes these are referred to as the training wheel levels. Level 1 to 2 in most tabletop RPGs are very simple by comparison to how the game functions later on. However, the purpose of these levels should be to introduce players into the system and teach them how it works, but Pathfinder 2e's low levels function fundamentally differently from mid to high level play. This is due to a combination of these mathematical issues, these weak low level spells, and some deliberate design choices that were made in order to make the low levels play differently from higher levels to the detriment of the system and to new players.
Okay. Yeah, I think that I'm not sure what I would change about low level play in Pathfinder, honestly. Um, it sounds like spells could get a damage boost, low rank spells. Maybe a pass of the classes to see that. I don't know if everyone should have a focus spell. I don't know if that would make sense. I uh, I don't know if everybody should have, like 4E is the extreme example, right? Everyone has one daily, and one encounter power or two encounter powers, right? Um, and this many at wills. I don't want too much uniformity between the classes, but to the extent though that some of these are the product of deliberate design choices, I think whatever those things are, like making casters uh feel less impactful. I think that was a choice at the lowest levels compared to later levels. I think that, should be addressed. Okay. User and string of characters, thank you for the 10, says, I don't get why casters should be expected to have the same approaches at every level. Also, what is wrong at early levels with showing the coordination has big impacts? Stay awesome. Thank you. I I personally kind of like the idea that play evolves over time. Personally, I don't know if it should be uniform, but I do think that this is a very good video and a contribution to the community in that it shows like there are some things. Um, what this is helpful for is for people to not get an overly negative impression of either the system of Pathfinder or of the abilities of their character because of how low level work. Um, and I think this is guidance for um, tables to help those people who are, you know, might be frustrated because they feel that they're not contributing as much as other players are, or they are getting some wrong impressions of the system. People who are coming from D&D will expect casters to have more of an impact, and they feel like they have this limited number of spell slots, and it feels bad if they, you know, their thing doesn't succeed, right? Oh, I'm your favorite gay lawyer. I hope you know many gay lawyers. I hope that I'm not the only gay lawyer. um cool. All right. Let's continue.
A lot of memes about Pathfinder 2nd Edition come from people playing at very low levels and incorrectly applying it to the game as a whole without realizing that most of the game doesn't function that way. There's a massive shift in how the game plays from level 1 to levels 6 to 7, after which things start to stabilize to a new normal, which is much more representative of the game for the next 15 levels. Casters become much stronger, and AoE damage spells deal massively more damage, eventually surpassing strikes around level 5 and never looking back. Underlevel enemies no longer die super quickly and deal meaningful damage. Overlevel enemies are no longer ungodly
Mhm.
powerful, and most martial characters eventually get the ability to strike as a reaction by level 6, which mitigates a lot of the advantages that, say, fighters get at very low levels. Though it is worth noting that at mid to high levels, a few of the classes, including the Guardian, the Fighter, and the Champion, can get multiple reactions per round, which is actually a very significant boost for them. There's a concept in psychology called anchoring bias. Anchoring bias is where an initial impression of something can lead to a lasting impression, even if that initial impression was misleading or incorrect. These initial incorrect impressions about the game often lead people to maintain these incorrect views about how the game works, even in the face of contradictory evidence. The issues with low-level play are responsible for many of the controversies in the Pathfinder 2e community, where people say contradictory things about the
Mm.
game because they are often basing their experience off of the very start of when they were playing, and they aren't recognizing, oh, we're higher level now, things are
Yeah, this might help contribute to some people finding out what they're informing arguments on Reddit.
different. So, can it be fixed? I think some of it can be fixed. For instance, better first rank spells, and to a lesser extent second rank spells, would definitely help casters starting out with the game. Experienced players may know what the good spells are, but a lot of new players won't, and they'll gravitate towards obvious spells like Breathe Fire, and they'll be very disappointed. If they made some of these more obvious options a little bit better, it would help them understand the game better. Adding more first rank spells could help with this, but it would still leave the trap of what if they don't pick them. I think that eradicating some of these bad low level damage spells to be decent would go a long way.
Now, I could see why Pathfinder would design second rank spells to do twice as much damage as first rank ones. I can see the logic. However, I don't know if that actually is ideal. It would be better. Um, I don't know if there should be this jump in feeling much more effective with second rank spells versus first rank. That doesn't. Yeah, I don't know. But where the game was in 2019, like the main competitor was 5e, right? Where first level characters feel quite ineffective. And so what was I trying to say there? Did I lose my point? I might have. Um I did. Those points were not connected. Okay.
I think also that giving the monk stand still and giving the swashbuckler reactive strike at first level would help give the game 2 more tank classes at first level, which could help with party diversity, and it would also buff these classes at low levels when they often struggle. As a GM, you can just start your game at higher levels, thus skipping the low levels entirely, but this does just avoid the problem instead of fixing it, and a lot of existing adventure paths do start at level 1, so this isn't necessarily an option for you. Other problems are really hard to address though. The low levels being extremely swingy and the monster math being weird is not correctable without
Yeah, I'm just going to say
the
like
low levels being
oh, where I'm fixing having standstill be earlier and reactive strike for swashbuckler at first level. I would not um poo poo on a GM doing that, but that does seem a little more work than I want to do as a GM. And it means like the party is I just haven't really found, from my experience with the players I've run, I've maybe had 100, maybe 200 Pathfinder 2e players, that there's been that much hand wringing about intra party balance within the party, because everyone, even if a character is feeling less impactful as the others, they're still doing some things that sometimes that do make an impact, right? So anyway, I just having perfect balance or aspiring to a greater balance than we currently have. I don't know if it's sure, like yeah,
necessarily
I
an
won't
option.
disparage anyone trying to do these tweaks, but I haven't found the necessity to. But then maybe my players have not watched this video yet and will approach me now. We'll see. Somebody cast Lose the Weight on My Brain. Yeah. Brain fart.
For you. Other
Even lawyers
problems
have
are
them.
really hard to address though. The low levels being extremely swingy and the monster math being weird is not correctable without significant changes to the system, as the on level monsters actually do scale correctly at low levels, and scaling these values upwards would require adjusting every higher level monster in the game, as you would just be adjusting your scale upwards. Making sure every caster gets a good spell at first level via their focus spells would go a long way, but this would require massive amounts of errata or house ruled restrictions on caster subclasses. And of course, casters having very limited numbers of spells at low levels is hard to correct in the system as is, without giving them a bunch of extra first rank spell slots that turn into higher rank spell slots as they level up, but this might lead to other balance issues.
Yeah, we're getting a little into sacred cow territory, which maybe by the time third edition Pathfinder comes around, people will be in, less clinging to the D&D traditions. Um,
For instance, any class with heal or soothe would basically have healing font at first and second level, which might end up being a little weird. So what has your experience been with low level Pathfinder? Have you noticed these
cool.
same issues in your games? Is there anything else about low level play differing from higher level play that you think I missed? I hope that this video helps to spawn a larger discussion in the community about these issues. It'd be great if we could help more people get on board with the core gameplay of this great game, and maybe correct some of the issues that low level play has, and help people understand the game better. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have a great day.
All right, Titanium Dragon has another video, The Importance of Winning Initiative. I encourage people to subscribe. Um, and as people can see, I've been also obsessed about Dolly Parton since her passing. I love Dolly Parton. And also Nene Royal, who is a musical phenomenon. People who like music, definitely check her out. All right, so I have two more things I'm going to look at today. A comment by Mathfinder on the subreddit, and then Swing Ripper's video that looks at similar issue. Um, okay. All right, here's our comment from Mathfinder. I don't know if he's here, but there's this thread on the subreddit asking, does free archetype add the power, and what would be an example? It's definitely accepted that the free archetype variant, particularly unrestricted free archetype, increases the power of characters. And how would you adjust your encounters as a GM? But Mathfinder, who goes by AAA Battery on the subreddit, made this comment. I've seen some folks whose experience I trust estimate it to feel like around a plus 10 XP per level increase in power. Someone asks, what do you mean by that? Like at level 20, you need 280 XP to make a moderate encounter with unrestricted free archetype? That doesn't sound like what I've seen, so probably you meant a different interpretation. And Mathfinder says, sort of, yes. All right, this is the comment. I'm going to link this thread in the chat if people want to see the full thread. But bathroom break. Bathroom break number 2. All right. Here's what happens. As you level up, the encounter guidelines do naturally stray away. In a completely non free archetype game, I think it's fair to say a low level party. Okay, what is this about? This is actually about a different issue. Um, and then we'll get to Swing Rippers video, which I think goes back to the first video's issues. But this one is just something fascinating to me, saying basically that the encounter budgets where 80 is a moderate encounter, 120 is a severe encounter, that you want to adjust those numbers upward as a GM when your party levels up. And this is what he writes. A low level party, level 1 to 2, actually feels threatened by 80 to 120 XP encounters, and 160 XP encounters do feel quite lethal. Levels 8 to 14 ish, 40 to 80 XP encounters start to mostly feel irrelevant. And 120 to 160 XP encounters become usable as the quote standard difficulty for large set pieces while still being a real challenge on the higher end. Level 15 plus, you can trivialize 120 XP encounters, and 160 plus becomes something you can do consistently. 200 XP becomes usable as the upper range for genuinely threatening encounters that are mostly winnable, and PL plus 5 enemies become approachable. When you add unrestricted free archetype on top of this, for a group of players who know how to use it, this progression nearly doubles. You'll end up being able to take on 200 XP encounters much faster, and 120 XP encounters will feel trivialized a lot faster. That would feel roughly like a plus 5 XP per level boost. But there's one huge caveat. The encounter can't just be you walk into a room, there are enemies and hazards were 260 XP, extreme at level 20 by this plus 5 metric, within 30 feet of you. When you run an encounter like that, there is a high chance that enough enemies just outright win initiative and then wipe the party. So you have to use things like complex terrain, large maps, waves with much less spacing needed than non-free archetypes, mind you. Circumstantial advantages, telegraphed silver bullets, pre-buffing, etc. with these encounters to make sure they're winnable. And at that point, you have room to increase the XP budget even more as needed, hence why plus 10 XP per level. I'm actually a little unclear on what he means. I thought plus 10 XP was a non-FA game. No, that is free archetype. Okay. TLDR. No FA PF2 gets easier as you level up, roughly to the pace of being 60-ish XP easier by level 20. Unrestricted free archetype gets easier faster. 200 XP encounters become approachable by level 10-ish. You still shouldn't just run 260 plus XP encounters. That's a ridiculously large number, it sounds like. Without caveats, no matter what rule set you're in, it just runs too high a chance of disaster. Your only not easy encounter options will be for an even larger XP budgets, but with all those caveats added. Hope this makes sense. Okay, I apologize, Pathfinder, if you didn't mean this to be like a post to be in a big video. But this seemed, to have a lot of thought into it and incorporating people's experience. Now, I feel like adding 5 XP per level is the proposal here if you have a no free archetype game. Is interesting. I do feel like, though, this is for groups that tend to optimize more. I think there's a significant, and this was actually in another recent thread in the subreddit, that a party of players who optimize versus one who don't is significantly more powerful. One, maybe 2 levels, quote unquote levels, more powerful than the other group. So this is all with a big grain of salt. So I think, given I'm imagining Pathfinder and who he's relying on, is assuming a more optimal party. And when I ran Fists of the Ruby Phoenix, I did have to increase the threat of the monsters with that group. Definitely. That was a group of people who very much optimized. And I'm finding that generally in my groups that I haven't felt the need to up the threat. I'll just have to check with my players. People feel like the threat could be raised. It's lower than their liking. Then they should just bring it up with me. And I will. It's easy enough to adjust encounters in Pathfinder. Yeah. Okay. I just thought that was an interesting post. See if there's any comments. Human Being says, my FA table said they wanted harder combat, so I started balancing things as if they had 2 more players at the table. So a severe is 180 and extreme is 240. There's a... Yeah. Power Core says optimized plays probably assumed for those statements, yeah. Oh, Kojo is in a game with dual class, unrestricted free archetype, ancestral paragon, and automatic bonus progression. Yes, yes. And someone comments optimized play is gonna... There's a world of difference of a party that just picks whatever, and a party that squeezes every single drop of power out of anything. Okay. And character optimization bleeds into teamwork. Yeah. And yeah, it's a conversation to have because your players are optimizing because they want to start to overcome the monsters more easily. And that's one of my group's decision. They're like, oh, I don't care if we're like higher level than this dungeon level assumes. And that we've been they still get the occasional fight that feels challenging, and they're happy with this current state of affairs. There's a conversation to have with every table. But yeah, this is interesting. So, and I basically have had unrestricted free archetype in all my campaigns, by the way. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. I like to see the group that can regularly take plus 200 XP encounters. Okay, at level 20. All right, Swing Ripper. It's gonna be our last video today. Is Swing Ripper still here? Oh no, did he have to go? Okay.
Back grab.
We're gonna talk about you behind your back. All right, this is titled Creature Level Math and Difficulty in PF2 from 11 days ago. Very recent.
Back Grappler Gamers. So for this video,
Grappler Gamers. Okay. Ooh, I see a rule: no repeat archetype between players. Yeah. I'm not sure if that reins things in. There's so many archetypes. But I've seen Medic come up a lot. I've seen Champion come up a lot. There's a very strong Psychic. Exemplar. All right, let's watch.
we are going to be talking about creature math. And by that, I of course mean how creatures scale with difficulty with regards to level. And for the starters, we're going to need to go over how the creature math is supposed to work before we start doing the math to see, does it actually work? The results may surprise you. So here we have what the EXP budget for normal encounters are. And so you notice that there are a lot of different counter difficulties. We are going to be using extreme threat as our threshold for an even fight because they are likely to be an even match for the characters.
Yeah.
And we are equating one creature level to be one player level, which is a very fair assumption. Creature math and player math do differ in a few areas, and I will point those out when we get to them. Of course, the part that we really need to discuss is this one, the creature XP and roll table. So, a creature that is of the party's level, therefore on the same level as the player characters, is worth 40 XP. And for every 2 levels above that, you double that number. So if you're 2 levels above, 40 times 2 is 80. 2 levels above that, you go up to 160, which means that fight by itself is fair against a group of 4 player characters. Same if you go down. If you go down 2 levels compared to the party, each creature is worth 20 XP. 2 below that, everything's worth 10. And for the numbers in between, you take the average.
Okay, this is kind of off topic, but for people referring to this video to look at how to use the encounter building system, I do want to point out that it's easy to overlook the fact that
So 10 plus.
I'm trying to scroll up on his window. I can't do that. But presenting a single creature that's 2 levels above the party to a 4-person party on paper is an 80 XP encounter, which would be a moderate threat. However, on this chart, it says that monster, their role is that of a moderate or severe threat boss. So basically, they're recognizing the fact that once you get to at-level monsters and stronger, so a boss actually counts as 1 step higher in threat. So presenting a party level +3 boss to a party is akin to it's either severe or extreme threat. So be very careful. Basically, a higher level monster generally presents more threat than lower level monsters of equivalent sum of XP. Okay. All right, Swing Whipper. Tune in when you can. So, all right, here we go.
20 divided by 2 gives you 15. 20 plus 40 divided by 2 gives you 30, etc., etc. And that's how this table is generated. And we are again using that 160 XP in total becomes an even fight. So that is the numbers that we're going to use for the rest of this discussion. And so to get the numbers to play with, you can see, evil, Excel Bright mode. But we have AC per level and 2 hit per level. And that comes from the building creature rules that Paizo actually does follow. It has a bunch of data in here about how creatures are made. I actually have a video discussing, which I'm going to put right up here.
Okay, 5e round incoming. The 5e Dungeon Master's Guide has a table for stats for CRs that they don't even follow. And they never updated it over the 10 years because they don't give a crap about DMs. And then their new Dungeon Master's Guide doesn't even have a table. It's now CR is just vibes. Rant over.
But basically, I already did the hard work of putting everything into a table, and I will release these Excel spreadsheets down in the comments down below. Not in the comments, but in the description down below, if you want to go and check it out and plug in different numbers, see what you get. So the first thing that I did is I compared attack level and 2 hits at a variety of levels. So this is the attacker level. If you're 4 levels below and you're level -1, you're effectively 11 values below their AC, and then evens out to being 13 values below. There is some weirdness at levels -1 and 0, because level -1 creatures are designed to have higher accuracy and lower...
Oh, so you need to roll an 11 to hit. Okay, that's what's going on here.
damage than other equivalent creatures.
Okay, hold on. Back up.
-1 values below. There is some weirdness at levels -1 and 0, because level -1 creatures are designed to have higher accuracy and lower damage than other equivalent creatures, to make it so that swarms of level -1 creatures do more consistent and expected damage for level 1, which is already the most swingy level in the game. So I think that's a very reasonable thing, but it does mean that when we're doing the rest of
I
this...
have to say that last video, the first video we watched, what I would have been interested in seeing was time to kill a party member, because party members have such low hit points that the it would have just underlined with this, made more extreme his point, which is that higher level monsters at low level present more threat of knocking out a player character. So maybe that's why I didn't explore it, but it would have been interesting to see, because that is very much felt at low levels in Pathfinder. Okay, back to the video.
So I think that's a very reasonable thing, but it does mean that when we're doing the rest of the discussion, we're just kind of like picking from the middle. Another thing that you might notice is that on the odd levels, which are like 1, 3, -1, -3, so when you're at an odd level difference, the amount you are off compared to your target is alternating, where it's the same on even levels. This is because the plus for both AC and 2 hit rises at a rate of 1.5 per level increase. So the odd levels, you're sometimes getting an extra boost, you're sometimes not getting an extra boost. And it alternates between
1 and 2.
those, that way every 2 levels, you're going by a difference of 3. So we go from 10 to -7. And I should also mention while we're here, I'm using high AC and high 2 hit. High AC is like fighter AC-ish.
Okay.
High 2 hit is like fighter accuracy-ish.
I've noticed that if you want to do the elite template to increase something to 2 levels up, just add 3 to everything. And that the elite template kind of, by adding 2 to everything, kind of overshoots a little bit. Ideally, you would add 1.5. And the weak template is in reverse. Ideally, you subtract 1.5 because that's the actual distance between the stats. At least when you're looking at, I think when you're looking at, that's interesting though, since we're all getting nerdy and mathy, the standard DC per level does not increase 1.5 per level. It's 4 every 3 levels. That's different. Okay. Back to the video.
If you are a barbarian, yeah, you're going to be swinging at this moderate accuracy, but most enemies are also not high AC. They're close to the moderate AC. I need to pick some values so I get some approximations, but generally, this is good enough for our purposes. So then I convert this to figure out what the expected damage per strike. Again, I'm using, similar to the previous video, 1 damage on hit, 2 damage on crit, because crits double your damage. So with that, we have that table from literally last video used here, so that we can then calculate how much attack damages will you deal per strike action. So we can see if you're 4 levels below target, you are expected to do about 0.45 of your strike damage when you take the strike action.
Okay.
And if you're 4 levels above the target, you're doing 1.45 times your strike damage for every strike action.
And they're doing more
And then
damage.
in order to calculate the XP, you take this orange box here, which is how often you're doing damage, how much is your damage per action used, and then we divide
I'm not sure what we're calculating yet. What we're working on, what the problem is.
that by how many actions are you surviving. Because you need to factor how long this monster takes to kill, because in interviews, Mark Seifter has said that creature math is roughly based on how much damage will this creature do in the totality of its lifespan. So damage dealt divided by damage you would need to take seems reasonable enough, and then I multiply by 40 to convert the units back to XP, and then we get this table here, which looks pretty close to the expected values.
All
we
right,
get.
so he's
And then
kind
we
of
so
taking these
dealt
XP values
by,
and tracking them
damage you would
with total damage dealt, and that's going to be the metric to present the threat posed by the monster. And apparently Mark Seifter said, and that makes sense, the total damage dealt is going to be some kind of function of their average damage per round and how long they survive. Okay. Ronald the math lawyer. Yeah, I'm doing a lot of math today. Math was my best subject in school. I had no... if you had asked me if I was going to be a lawyer, I would have been like, what? When I was a kid.
Seems reasonable enough, and then I multiply by 40 to convert the units back to XP, and then we get this table here, which looks pretty close to the expected values we'd get from the combat threats.
So
pretty...
This is the amount of damage they do to a character, and it kind of tracks. Interesting. Wow. Okay. It gets a little low though in the upper ranges, it seems.
Close to the expected values we'd get from the combat threats creature XP and roll table. So I have the actual expected values down here, which is this 10 to 160, and the calculate values above it. And so with this, we have creatures that are significant.
Of course, there's something not taken into account here, that higher level monsters at level 1 are going to knock out your party member, and there's a danger of a death spiral. But then this is a, you know, you can't take that into account with this math exercise.
Lower
level. I'm not going to do tax services. Ugh. Ronald the math professor. All right.
Being valued as slightly more powerful, and creatures that are higher level being slightly less powerful. And now there are several ways we can explain this. Number one being that, while higher level creatures are actually slightly scaling their damage and 2-hit numbers. So we'd expect that this to be slightly more powerful than the 130s showing here, so maybe it gets close to 160. And these guys are doing a little bit less damage.
I'm not sure what he just said.
And 2-hit numbers. Number one being that, while higher level creatures are actually slightly scaling their damage and 2-hit numbers. So we'd expect that this to be slightly more powerful than the 130s showing here, so maybe it gets close to 160.
Scaling their damage and HP numbers. Not sure what that meant.
And these guys are doing a little bit less damage than the 1 versus 2 metric that we have been talking about. So maybe this is closer to 10. And if we stop there, all the math looks like it checks out. But we're not just going to stop there. We have to factor in HP and actual damage numbers. We have to factor in HP and actual damage numbers. So with this, we can note high HP, high damage. This is just like arbitrary.
I thought we were looking at damage numbers in the last formula. I guess not.
Numbers. High HP is far more HP than a normal player character would have. This is like one of the deviations I mentioned, but it shouldn't affect our results too much. I have run these calculations again using low HPs and different valuations and all kinds of other stuff. I get very similar numbers each time. So with that, we can move along. And then I can give us hits to kill. If you're 4 levels below and you're a level 1 creature, it's going to take you about 15 hits to kill what is effectively a level 5 creature that's 4 levels above you. Where that creature is only going to take 1.5 hits to kill you. You know what? That feels fair considering how I've played some extreme boss fights at this level. Yeah, that's very dangerous. And you can see that the hits to kill actually dips down for a little bit, and then spikes back up if you are the lower level creature. But for basically every other time, fights just take longer and longer and longer. And now fights usually take longer because HP scales at 25 HP per level for most points, and using the numbers that I'm using, where damage is increasing by 2 or 1 for most levels. So damage is scaling at a much slower rate than HP, so fights generally take longer. But boss fights take a short amount of time for a little bit here. Now, why is that? So this goes into percent differences. So let's use going from level 1 to level 2 as an example. Your damage has increased by 3. So your damage has increased by 50%. Where the enemy HP going from 5 to 6, well, that's only like a 20% increase, maybe a 22% increase. 50% boost to damage is much larger than 20% boost to HP, so the fight ends quicker, relatively speaking.
Okay.
But as you start getting higher levels, this HP...
Oh, so the level 1 creature fighting a level 5 monster, a level 1 monster versus a level 5 monster, when you went up a level, both of you went up a level, it became faster to kill them. Okay.
He really starts outscaling damage, so you see fights take longer even in the boss fight scenarios late game. I then actually factored in accuracy to give us the amount of strike actions you need to do per kill on monster, and in this case, it's just kind of multiplier on the numbers that we saw previously, but now you can see that the higher level monster only needs to do 1 strike on average to knock out a player character, where you as a player, you need to do 33.7 hits to kill the monster, which is quite a difference, might I say. But higher levels, if you are level 20, the boss needs to do 6 hits to kill you, and you can do 31 hits to kill the monster, which sounds reasonable. But let's scale that based on how much like XP creatures would be worth. And to do that, we are going to scale based on how many they'd have in a round. So if you're a level -4 creature, there's effectively going to be 4 of you, so all these numbers are divided by 4. If you are 4 levels above, there's going to be 4 opponents, so all these numbers have to get multiplied by 4, so it takes longer to kill. And you can see that if you are all the lower level guys, the amount of strike rounds you need to take is pretty similar all the time, where if you're the boss, it goes from you being able to really wipe out the enemy team very quickly to it takes a long time. And this again comes from HP numbers.
Okay. I'm not sure I'm following all of this, but it seems like we're seeing similar math where from the first video where fights take, quote, longer to deplete the hit points at higher levels, and the threat posed by higher level monsters is much greater at low levels, yeah?
So a level 16 creature is going to have 365 HP. If you're fighting 4 of them, well, suddenly you're needing to chunk through over 1,400 HP, where they only need to hit through 465. So the amount of HP on each side is not even anymore, which leads to lower level enemies being more dangerous at higher levels, where higher level enemies are more dangerous at lower level, and that comes entirely from this linear scaling of HP and this linear scaling of damage.
From the fact that HP scales faster than damage. Okay. Huh.
That is not factored in inside the combat math. So this is where I'm making my claim of Pathfinder's creature math is broken. I should also mention like a few caveats to that statement, because now that I'm getting into like the more conclusions, I do need to say my caveats, very similar to last video. I'm assuming that each creature is only making 1 strike action per turn, no other actions exist, no buffs or debuffs exist, no special abilities exist, no healings exist, all creatures are doing their damage, nothing loses strength from being knocked out early. Also, second strikes don't exist, because you're only making first strike. So this math is very in a vacuum. Like,
Yeah, so if you're not accounting for the fact that lower level monsters are being whittled away through attrition and their strength is lessening over the time of the battle, this white room scenario would overestimate the threat presented by several lower level enemies, I believe. I hope I'm following along.
white rooms wish they could be as empty. That being said, I do think there's an interesting point of discussion, because then we can talk about where my assumptions were wrong and how that changes things, but we'll get there in a little bit. We now need to include the damage, do all the stuff. Here's the effect of attacker strength. You can see that minions are 3 times as strong as you'd expect them to be at those higher levels, but they are way weaker at the lower levels, where boss fights are really hard at the early levels and then fall off a cliff in late game. Interesting. And to calculate these numbers, we're just kind of doing the same how long is the creature surviving math down here. Then we scale them based on XP to get these numbers over here. To then see, yeah, we're still like scaling on average to higher level creatures are more dangerous and lower level creatures are less dangerous on average. And we can see that according to this math, the game is the most balanced between levels about 4 to 9 is when the game has its best balance, which I think
assume means the encounter math is most accurate. Is that what's meant by that statement?
sounds about right. Notably, attacking with the multi-attack penalty doesn't affect bosses as much, so bosses are actually a little bit more dangerous than this chart is showing. See my previous video for more details on that.
So, right, because 103 for plus party level +4 is too low. So this is he's taking into account that this is underselling their threat.
But we can then see this imbalance here. So now, let's get abstract. We've gone over the math. There is an error. Higher level creatures that are bosses are way less dangerous than the math would expect them to be. So, experientially, how does the game fix this? And my answer is that high level bosses use area abilities. Area abilities usually have a slightly lower DC than non-area abilities, especially area passives, such as Frightful Presence. And you can go ahead and read that in the building creature rules. I think that if I find it again, I'll put the sidebar here. If I was too lazy to find it, I'm sorry. But in any case, these area abilities let the bosses do damage to 4-player characters, effectively multiplying their damage when they are by themselves, making them actually as dangerous as you'd expect. It lets them chunk down through that massive pool of HP. But then why do people feel like caster bosses are so weak at the higher levels? And it's because, well, players also get to have pretty crazy abilities to deal with them. Like, look at this fighter stance here. You get a counterspell on a normal hit on a reactive strike? Oh man, that's crazy. And yeah, it is. But
I've had some fights where some higher level caster enemies have been pretty scary, actually. In the first couple of rounds, when they can use some very impactful high level spell slots like mass slow, you know, that that happened recently. But yeah, I'm just not sure how true that is. But that's just my anecdotal experience.
the other thing to note is that player character casters, when they're fighting a bunch of minions, well, you have 3 allies, so you're actually fighting 16 creatures that are 4 levels below you in an extreme fight, and they can all get hit by the same area spell. So your area spell is chunking down so much more HP, and if you have a second blaster caster, well, they're also chunking down a ton of HP. So if each area spell knocks down the enemy's HP by about a quarter, one area spell, bam, everybody's down to a quarter of their HP. Second area spell, bam, everybody's down to 50% of their HP. And you're able to clean up that pretty quickly. But as a caster solo boss, they cast their one AoE spell in the party, each of the party members lose a quarter of their HP, and then they get beat to death. Because they don't really have the detailed support structure that a player character caster would, and that is expected of the balanced player character casters coming in late game, that they have friends that are helping them, and their area attacks are hitting a lot of enemies.
And in those experiences I've talked about, no one has had disruptive stance, so that's, you know, maybe this is a disruptive stance issue.
So, area attacks are very needed late game. The blaster caster experience, yeah, as soon as you start getting to those higher levels where HP is scaling so high, you're gonna need help to burst through the enemy's HP numbers. And you're gonna want to have area debuffs because guess what? Higher level monsters have high level crazy special abilities, and you want to be able to cancel them. So I think that things like a 6th rank Roaring Applause is actually near mandatory in high level gameplay, but I don't know if that's a hot take or not anymore because I'm kind of out of touch.
All right, so I didn't follow everything in the math part. I found that kind of confusing, but what I'm hearing from Sean is that higher level creatures are less, by the math, purely DPR, let's say, are quote unquote weaker than they should be according to the encounter building system, but that these AoE effects, and I assume other effects that are not just DPR, are giving them more than the math would suggest, more threat. Hey, Swing Ripper. Hello. So I was a little lost by the math, Sean, but my takeaways were that the hit points scale faster than damage, and that fact, I believe, means that higher level creatures that are higher level than the other side are actually overestimated their strength is by the XP system. And now we're getting to how AoE effects and perhaps other things make them, that DPR is not the whole story, that other things will give them more threat. I can also explain math in more detail. I had no clue how to thread the needle on this kind of video's technical topic. Yeah, I was yeah. Oh, here we go.
And at low levels, bosses are of course the most dangerous thing in the game, but you know, you have runic weapon to effectively double one of your character's damage, and you kind of funnel buffs into them to have one character just kind of like try and kill the boss and cheese them out that way. That's a very known strategy, and it's really the only good way to deal with much higher level foes at level 1. But you don't hear many people talk about the tactics of late game, and a lot of that has to do because in late game, you're talking a lot more about how do you deal with individual creature abilities, like, you know, Grim Reaper and Lesser Death teleporting on you, canceling your spells, so I do really enjoy reaction denial.
I like that higher level monsters have bigger dramatic abilities that you have to think about, and it also counters the party having more tools. HP scaling faster than damage means high level play is more sloggy, says Swingripper. Yeah. I guess it's more likely to get to a point where you can just call the battle. However, I think that I relatively like the amount of... I still find it interesting. Higher level fights. Usually several rounds in.
Spells come late game. But it's just a lot harder to talk about the game when there's more factors involved. So I hope this video is of interest to you. I hope that I explained the value of the math of the game. Wait, actually, before I do conclusion, I know somebody in the comments is going to say the following. Hey, I know that the game is unbalanced, and that's why I choose to run proficiency without level. If you run proficiency without level, you are just feeding into the linear scaling of damage and HP even more, so all the imbalance sources are actually only amplified in proficiency without level. It will be worse. I mean, clearly there are still issues that exist in the base game, but you emphasize the things that are causing the issues with the game's expected math, and you're going to need to balance more by ear, but you kind of need to do that come late game monsters anyway because of how impactful special abilities are. In Pathfinder, you don't need to pay as much attention to those special abilities as you would in a game like D&D 5th edition, or especially Pathfinder 1st, where special abilities are the name of the game. But with that, I think that's everything I need to say on this topic, and I hope it was understandable, and at least a little bit engaging. I'm sure my viewer analytics are not going to like a second math video in a row, but with that, I'll see y'all next time. Peace out.
All right. So everybody, of course, subscribe to Swingripper, and I will I'm going to change my layout. Layout change. Let's see here. Oh, I should do something. What have I done? Okay. Sorry, I need to set up a different scene. Look, I'm moving myself. Fun. Okay. I have a couple things to say, which is, yeah, in the end, it seems like the designers designed it so that the math encounter balancing system would work, and created this situation where every 2 levels the power of creatures doubles. However, partly in order to adhere to traditions and not kill sacred cows, there is some distortion in the lower levels. And in the end, and also Sean points out how it doesn't work perfectly, but I feel like in the end, there's going to be a gap in optimization and power between parties, depending on how much they optimize anyway, that making it an exact science is not really possible. And in the end, you'll just have to do a temperature check at your table to see whether the level of threat is what you want. And if it were completely balanced from 1 to 20, um I don't know. I don't know if that even is desirable. I personally would like to see shifts in the meta happen between 1 to 20 myself. All right, so let's see. Are there any other comments? I think we can wrap up. Well, everybody subscribe if you haven't yet. I'm super close to 50K. Let me see just the last round of comments here. Whoops. Oh, that's one of the accusations I hear, that high level monsters are HP bags, basically. Are you talking about Pathfinder? Because I think it's kind of the opposite in Pathfinder, where a monster that's 4 levels higher than the party will have like 500 hit points, but 4 creatures that are at level, which by the math would be equal threat, would have 400 times 4 hit points, right? The way that the math works. Someone asks, are you guys playing on the level above 13 often? I think a good number of people are going into the high levels, and that's one of the appeals of Pathfinder that gets people to try it out, that high level play is functional. So yeah. Fluffy prefers Pathfinder without adding level to proficiency. Okay. Unsubscribing and resubscribing will not help. Yeah, we kind of have the issue of I'm open to doing level without proficiency, to have a more sandboxy kind of game, to try that out, but I haven't done that yet. One of the issues on my bounded accuracy video, I did a video saying bounded accuracy is a lie about Pathfinder, about D&D, and I think one of the problems with not with having quote bounded accuracy, which they didn't even fully implement, was that what mainly distinguishes lower level monsters and higher level monsters is just how many hit points they have, and it means higher level monsters in higher level fights are just a slog. But I think that's more an issue of how they implemented it, honestly. Not oh, there's Morkborg, it magically appeared because I turned off my chroma key. Where HP outscales damage very radically. Okay. So I'm about to log off in a sec. Any other comments? This is enlightening as someone who's been looking into Pathfinder 2e over the last month. Our GM wants to run PF2e next, and I'm usually more of a snappy, forged in the dark kind of player. So, yep. I believe this is crunchier than... I'm not too familiar with Forge in the Dark. I'm sorry. Is that a lighter RPG? Rules light? Uh-huh. If you add your level to your proficiency, you can take a nap in the field of hostile goblins and come out unharmed if you're sufficiently high level. It's true. Well, not exactly take a nap. Well, a level 3 party cannot take a nap in a field of hostile goblins, actually. I assume you'll be going beyond the recommended level ranges then. West marches, I assume that means people of different levels, huh? That's a little hard to pull off in Pathfinder. So yeah, in that case, you'll want proficiency without level. Oh yeah, Swing Ripper echoes my thought. Okay, I gotta use the bathroom, and I've finished my promised content. But like, subscribe, ring the bell, because I do want to stream the new beginner box, and I also And hopefully, I won't announce it yet, but I might try a different RPG system on this channel than a live stream. Oh, it's like Blades in the Dark. Yes, gotcha. So, powered by the Apocalypse. Yeah, I like that. I like systems based on that. Okay, I'm going to end the stream. You only have so much time to make comments, but leave comments on the video and also join my Discord. um, Under announcements, I linked the link to this stream, and there's a thread attached to that post on my Discord. And I'll make sure the Discord link is in the description. I'm going to add it right after I log off so that you can join it and you can continue the discussion there. Okay, but thank you for watching. Thank you for all your comments.